welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. My name is Susan Secord, and this spring I've been serving as the chair of the annual pledge drive. I'm also on the Climate Action Ministry and the Defending Democracy team. And today I am your worship leader. So one thing sorry, they said we're supposed to talk about what we do, so I'm just going by what I was told to do. Okay. Okay. One thing I do love about this church, this congregation, is how we show up when it matters. And yesterday, on the largest day of protest in this country, so many of us in this congregation were able to turn out. We were in Boulder, we were in Lyons, we were in Lafayette, in Louisville, in Broomfield, in Denver, and I'm probably missing someplace. Longmont, of course! Most important, I'm so sorry. You got the best coverage in the newspaper, actually. What I also love about this church is that we're showing up during these times of great uncertainty in pledging to financially support our beloved church. So if you're joining us online, please fill out the visitor form in the link in the description. We'd love to connect with you. I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's visiting us for the first time. Rather than gathering because we all have the same beliefs, we are an intentional community gathered around our shared promise to support each other's individual spiritual journeys. We don't strive to do things perfectly here, but we do take the needs of people across all generations seriously. And if you or a small human you're with need to wiggle or step out or cough or are not perfectly still or silent at all times, that's really okay. We're all just people. So please take care of yourself. That includes moving forward if you get stuck in a ray of sunlight or want fewer distractions. So each week we gather. When we gather, we light our chalice, just as 1,000 other congregations do each week around this country. It's a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist past, present, and future. It is a visible reminder of our interconnection. I'd like to invite Reed Bailey to say a few words and light our chalice this morning.
Good morning. My name is Reed Bailey, as you already know. And as I like to tell my grandkids, my great-grandkids, I'm as old as dirt. I am so old that I've been coming to this church for 50 years, starting in June. June will be my 50th year anniversary. I came here as a recovering Mormon. There may be a few of them out there that can relate to that. And I found a community that would allow me the freedom to heal. One that accepted me as I was and gave me the space to reconfigure my view of the world and the direction of my journey. UUCB gave me a safe place to deprogram. Yeah, I'm going to burn my finger, aren't I? Thanks, Emily. A safe place to deprogram, heal, and grow by serving as treasurer, as president, buildings and gardens chair, singing in the choir, thanks to Emily, assistant RE, which is always a lot of fun, and I got to play Santa Claus. Now, that's a great way to deprogram. And also, I've really enjoyed the deep fellowship and friendships I've developed in the men's group. For the men in here who haven't been to the men's group, it's a great group of fellows. I am clear my path to transformation would have been much more difficult without this progressive safe harbor and the space it meets in today. And in 1976 when I walked through the door. The copper doors were the front doors to this church. They're now the doors to the office of our minister, who was wearing Levi's rolled up. Can't go wrong with that. But how did this sacred space we meet in come to be? Its creation came from the generosity and very hard work of our UU ancestors. It all started about 1960 when Doctors Albert and Amy Bowman, and there's actually a plaque back there on that wall that nobody sees, acknowledging the fact that they gave money and donated this 3 acres to the church, which was meeting in a small carriage house, that's a garage, downtown. And but what people don't realize is this sanctuary and the RE wing was built primarily with the labor of members. That was kind of a thing back in the 60s. You build your church. And in they finished it in 62, and in 64 they had too many RE kids, and they doubled the size of the RE wing to accommodate that. And again, it was done with donated labor and a small capital campaign. In 1982, Jim Hester, I think some of you knew Jim, he got the bright idea. I was actually in that hearth room right there when he suggested we needed to build the sky room so we could have a fellowship hall, more bathrooms, and an office. And that was funded with a capital campaign. And I remember Bev Sears' husband, Wes Sears, putting up the moss rock wall out there. So again, much of that was built with donated labor from the church. So I light this chalice today with great gratitude and honor for our UU ancestors and all of you who are donating your time, talents, and money to extend this safe harbor for me and assure this safe harbor will be here as a beautiful beacon of love, compassion, and evidence-based human truths for future generations seeking refuge from the storm to heal.
Will you rise in body or in spirit and join in our opening hymn? It is number 346. If you'd like to read along in the hymnal, or the lyrics will be on the screen. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love is hard to find, and I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Let's take a breath together. And settle in and find solid ground under your feet. And let yourself arrive. Come into this place which we make holy, blessed by our intention, by our remembering, by our seeking for the thread of compassion that leads through the labyrinth of the world. Let yourself arrive in this house where none of us are saints and none of us are heroes and all of us are living ordinarily complicated lives. And don't leave any part of yourself behind. Bring in with you the fear and hope of this week, of this day. You who joined the visible protest yesterday, declaring with your bodies and your presence that this moment in our country is not right, is not normal. You who on Tuesday will be part of Trans Day of Visibility, who will resist the erasure of our siblings. You who on Wednesday, Thursday here, will celebrate Passover and tell the story that freedom is coming, no matter how stuck the world seems. You who will celebrate this next Sunday, Easter, declaring that love wins, but not without passing through a long and a difficult darkness. We don't gather in this house to erase the difficulty of this moment or avoid our own suffering or minimize our anxieties. But we do gather to remember that's not the whole story. And we work to build the world that we dream of, one protest at a time, one song at a time, one day at a time. Worship, said the Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, worship, the meaning of that, the task of that, the function of it, whatever you may have heard elsewhere, worship is the experience of renewed loyalty to the spirit of love and all its ways. We gather lifted up in celebration. We gather carrying the weight of our beloved dead and the uncertainties of all the things not done, all the steps not taken, acknowledging that we need a renewed loyalty to the spirit of love. So we gather, and here we are, humble and joyful, knowing we are enough, and also that we're not enough, knowing that every one of us is beloved, is worthy exactly as you are, and also we could use a little work. Because that's what it is to be a person. We join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation, of grounding, of coming more fully into this space, finding a way to sit and feel supported, maybe closing your eyes, maybe letting your breath slow down, letting yourself catch up to yourself. These words for reflection from the Colorado poet Rosemary Watola Tromer. She writes this called Because. Because. So, I can't save the world, can't save even myself, can't wrap my arms around every frightened child, can't foster peace among the nations, can't bring love to all who feel unlovable. So, I practice opening my heart right here in this room and being gentle with my insufficiency. I practice walking down the street heart first. And if it's insufficient to share love, I will practice loving anyway. I want to converse about truth, about trust. I want to invite compassion into every interaction. One willing heart can't stop a war. One willing heart can't feed all the hungry, and sometimes, daunted by a task too big, I tell myself, what's the use of trying? Today the invitation is clear to be ridiculously courageous in love, to open the heart like a lilac in May, knowing freeze is possible, and opening anyway. To take love seriously, to give love wildly, to race up to the world as if I were a puppy, adoring and unjaded, stumbling on my own exuberance. To feel the shock of indifference, of anger, of cruelty, of fear, and stay open. To love as if it matters, as if the world depends on it. Be together in silence for just a moment. Amen. Despair, depression maybe, it's a kind of forgetting. Despair is a narrowing of your field of view and focus until there are no possibilities left to see. Only this endlessly, hopelessness or stuckness or aloneness. And you forget about joy and wonder and connection and the sly smile and the needed hug. In despair, you forget that those things exist. They're invisible, they're non-existent, inaccessible. It's a kind of forgetting of the possibility of anything else, and I do not know how to argue or persuade or convince a person out of despair. But we can remind each other of the things that we forget. We can remind each other of something that your past self knew and your future self will know again. That's the practice that we do each week of placing stones in symbol of our joys and our sorrows. That's the practice of feeling together the hopes and the worries that we have. The practice is getting into your body the habit of remembering just how big the world is, remembering that a life is always ending somewhere, a life is always beginning somewhere. It's practicing being people who hold despair in one hand and joy in the other, not to cancel each other out or find out who wins in the remainder, but a people who hold grief and hold hope because both of those things are real, and to let our hearts break open without shattering. Among the joys and sorrows that you've placed stones for this morning, I have a few to lift up. First, for Marge Mago, who died on Monday this week. Marge had been part of this community for 49 years. She was 94. She lived almost her whole life on her own terms. She had an accent from northern New Hampshire people don't even have anymore. And we will miss her. We hold in love, too, Cornelia Grandhomme, who died unexpectedly this week. Her husband, Chris, and her kids, we see you, we love you. We hold concern for Cuba. Jamie Shuey, who was there doing support and relief work, writes, their situation gets worse by the day, no oil, no supplies. And we hold, just at the same time, this abiding joyfulness for Tom and Karina Denkenwolf and for Anton, who welcomed baby Adeline Cynthia Denkenwolf, born on the 18th. And they are all doing well. For the blessings, for the concerns we carry, we hold this compassionate space with love. Amen. 20 years before her birth in 14th century England, a famine killed as many as a fifth of all people across northern Europe. By the time she was 10 years old, the Black Plague had killed nearly half the population of Europe. It would be 300 years before global population recovered to pre-plague levels. And by the time Julian was an adult, a woman religious, a nun in Norwich in England, the 100 Years' War between Britain and France had lasted for a half century, this war that would go on through 5 continuous generations. And as much as the world was hellish, this was an era where hell was still a real place, not a metaphor, a destination. And Julian of Norwich wrestled too with the everyday reality we all experience, that good people do bad things, that every one of us falls short of perfection, that none of us has lived every moment of our life as we wished we had. I don't even think any of us has come close. So they're in the midst of all of this. At age 30, she's dying. And a priest comes to her to administer the last rites. And as he lifts the cross above the foot of her bed, she has a series of visions that she goes on to write down and record, and then take 2 decades to analyze and make sense of and turn into a longer work. And in her 13th vision in this series, at the edge of her own death, she sees, in that moment, she sees Jesus who tells her, "It was necessary that there should be sin, but all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." And what that means first, because this may not be the language that we all are using, is that first off, none of us are perfect. The notion of sin, of not being the people we aspire to, of missing the mark, that's something necessary, not as part of like a vindictive, vengeful master universe plan, not because there are demons sitting on your shoulders. Necessary, like gravity is necessary, or inertia, or mass. Just part of the reality of what it is to be alive is that we will fall short. And still, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. The evidence was not on the side of the statement. Black Plague, 100 Years' War, about to die. All will be well. Frankly, all will be well sounds a little bit like spiritual bypassing. Do you know this phrase? This is great. I learned this year. A Buddhist psychologist coins the term in the 90s. He says spiritual bypassing is a term to describe a process, he writes, I saw in my Buddhist community and also in myself. Although most of us were sincerely trying to work on ourselves, I noticed a widespread tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, unfinished developmental tasks. You unexpectedly lose someone you love. And a friend who can't stand to sit in the unanswerable, incomprehensible grief of that moment tells you instead, don't worry, everything happens for a reason. Just keep praying and read your Bible. God has a plan for you. It will all be okay. And this is certainly not confined to Christianity. This terrible thing, this is just karma. Meditate more. You're not your feelings. One author writes, it's spiritual practice. It's not that those practices are bad. Those are practices for liberation. But this is spiritual practice in the service of repression, usually because we can't tolerate what we're feeling, or because we think we shouldn't be experiencing what we're feeling. It uses the tools designed for growth and integration instead as tools of avoidance or denial, that part of your being human doesn't belong in your spiritual life. And here's the thing. I get it as a defense mechanism, right? Like I have compassion. I don't agree with it. I don't think they should do it, but I have compassion for the person who says, in that unanswerable moment of grief, who says everything happens for a reason, because they are trying and unable to face the enormity of suffering. And so running away from it. I get it. But Julian of Norwich, who survives war and plague and her own near-death experience, when she hears in her deathbed vision, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well, she does not make the turn onto the detour that language offers, the detour around the reality of suffering. Instead, she sits with this as an unanswered mystery for years. She writes later in her life, she says, from the time that the vision was shown, I desired often to know what the meaning was, and 15 years and more afterward, I was answered in my spiritual understanding, which I think incidentally is a clue about how long it takes to figure things out in life. She says, it was thus, would you know your Lord's meaning in this thing? Know it well, love was his meaning. Who showed it to you? Love. What did he show you? Love. Why did he show it? For love. Keep yourself therein, and you shall know and understand more of the same. But you shall never know nor understand any other thing forever. All will be well. Hear her clearly. In that vision, she does not hear, all will be fine. She does not hear, you will not get hurt, you will not suffer and grow old and die. She does not hear, everything will be okay. She does not hear, you are mistaken about how bad it is. She writes, if there is anywhere on earth a lover of God who is always kept safe, I know nothing of it. For this was not shown to me. But this was shown, that in falling and rising again, we're always kept in that same precious love. 6 or 7 centuries later, that may not be your language for it. But what she's pointing to, what she's trying to break through in those old words, is that God is love literally, holding us, the ground of our being, love. That we're sailing through life across an ocean of compassion, which is holding us up, not even realizing it. And the work then is to put love at the center of our living, not as a way to avoid or bypass the awfulness which is real, but as the foundation which allows us to face it. Years ago, when I taught Unitarian Universalist seminarians preparing for ministry, I would assign my students to write 5 pages on their source of hope, which is sort of an impossible assignment. 5 pages is either way too much room or not even vaguely enough room. To answer this question, what is the fundamental theological, philosophical, psychological source of hope from which you draw when you speak to people in despair, when you are in your own despair and uncertainty? Mostly I felt like the assignment was more for my benefit than theirs. It was about this point in the spring every year, and my own reserves of hope would be growing thin. And I got to read a couple of dozen people telling me why they are people of hope. They would say, one of them, "I am in the midst of despair and trauma, and yet I still get up every day." And another said, "My mother taught me things to do to find hope." And still another, "There is a love that flows through self and community and infinite, and I can take refuge in it because it's always there, whether I can feel it or not." And another said, "Hope is a quiet thing. It's an ember inside." One paper started with the opening line that sometimes I hear it argumentatively, and sometimes I hear it so tenderly. It says, in the first line, the student writes, "I'm not a philosopher." Listen, buddy, I'm not a philosopher. And still another said, "My hope begins with compassion toward myself." Hope does not just spring eternal. Hope is in the small. Hope, writes the poet Emily Dickinson, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Mysterious, arriving, unexpected, weak and indomitable, perching not in our thinking mind or our heart, but somewhere deeper even, the soul, that faculty of ours that touches, encounters, perceives mystery. Hope lives in that part which walks the wet sand between the known ground and the unknown, the part of us that lives before we make meaning. There's a home for hope, fragile, indestructible. A thing with feathers. Years ago, in another church in another city, on a Thursday afternoon, the office volunteer answering phones and emails that day walked into my office, holding in her cupped hands, tenderly, gently, slowly, a sparrow. A thing with feathers, which had flown full force into a window and dropped to the ground motionless and moved by compassion, not knowing if she would be its nurse or undertaker. This volunteer picked it up and, finding its heart beating so fast in her hand, body stunned, still motionless, brought it in for us to wonder together at this wild little life resting in her palm. Hope is that feeling, standing at the shoreline of mystery, woven into the fabric of life. The knowing in your bones that living may be like steering your little boat through an ocean storm at night, but also that the water below your hull is an ocean of compassion. It would be easier, I think, to tell you instead that life all turns out good or turns out bad. I don't think you'd believe me, but it would be simpler at least. It's a more difficult and honest answer to tell you it's just complicated. That the seeds of possibility are here for you, for the world itself. And that possible future also is real and is not guaranteed and is real anyway. It's harder to say that hope lives in a place inside you which is felt, which is experienced, which happens before thinking about it, which we're working to tune our hearts to hear. It's harder, but more honest to tell you that hope takes time too, and we find it and lose it and find it and lose it again and again, and only 15 years later do we figure out what that thing meant back then. There's an old Minnesotan poet called Lewis Jenkins, who almost all of his poetry can be read grumpily or tenderly. This one too, I hear it. This is called Confusing Fall Warblers, the little birds. Confusing Fall Warblers. He says, this is the way things go. Not high and direct, like the geese with all their honking fanfare, or the eagle riding the rising air, but like small birds feeding, moving from bush to tree to weed, with what seems like no plan at all. Just one thing leading to another. In the Christian tradition, Easter isn't a Sunday, it's a season, Eastertide, a season of the calendar of the Spirit, 50 days long. So much of what we think of as Christianity today are innovations, practices that come years and centuries after the death of Jesus. But the Easter season, unlike Lent, unlike Advent, was celebrated in the very early church. And I wonder what hope was like for them, those earliest followers of Jesus, before there was such a thing as Christians. I mean, in the months that followed the death of their teacher, their rabbi who had preached love and radical belonging, and taught and healed and had actually, in fact, created a community where everyone counted and everyone mattered, judged on the content of their character. With their teacher gone, when would come the world that they dreamed of? And I imagine the season that followed was of uncertainty as much as hope. A people who knew in their bones that another way of living together was possible. Who knew that there is another life and another world inside of this one, a possibility, like a nesting doll, founded on compassion, community, love at the center. There's wisdom, I think, then, in hope, not as an event, a Sunday, but a season. For them, like us, resolve must have come and gone as the weather changed, and the seeds of goodness in all of us sprout on their own time, not ours. But still, they kept on singing the world they dreamed of, trying to put love at the center, us too. So, hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock. Tomorrow is another day. This is words from the writer E.B. White, who lived in a time when you had to wind clocks in order for them to continue to run. In his later years, he received a letter from someone despairing of the state of the world and believing that the work of the author was to speak a word of courage and uplift to humanity. This is what he wrote in response. He said, "As long as there is one upright man and one compassionate woman, their contagion may spread, and the scene is not desolate. Hope is the thing that's left to us in a bad time. I shall get up Sunday morning and wind the clock as a contribution to order and steadfastness." Sailors have an expression about the weather, he writes. They say, "The weather is a great bluffer." And I guess the same is true of our human society. Things can look dark, then a break show in the clouds, and all is changed rather suddenly. Hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock. Sincerely, E.B. White. Sincerely, amen. When we rise in body or in spirit, let's sing together.